All right.
Peace, family. How y'all doing out there? Welcome to another broadcast of Melanated Solutions Media. I'm Kashama Sankofa. We have our brother Duke the Root with us. Say hello, Duke.
Hello, everyone.
We're also being joined by Dr. Cleo Monago this evening. I know y'all haven't seen him in a while. We're glad to see him. What's up, Cleo?
It's good to see y'all too. What's up? What's up? I heard the rumor that y'all been holding it down.
I'm glad that rumor's out there. That's a great rumor.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't know it was a rumor. I thought that was like
a fact.
Hardcore fact out here in these streets. But again, I will mention again, this is Melanated Solutions Media. Be sure to check us out on Facebook as well as YouTube. Make sure you like and subscribe. Also share this video, and you will also have the chance to come on and join us at some point. We will put the link in the chat so that you can click on and have a conversation with us face to face. Now, at this part, Duke, I would like for you to go ahead and update us on some of our family feedback from the last Melanated Solutions Media.
Yes, yeah. So, short list this week. We have our good and faithful. We need to start handing out certificates or something. For Lowell B. Denny, he said, "Thank you for this. Black people need this reality check. It's not just Charlemagne the Clown," in reference to dissecting Black media and white interventions around it. But also contrarily, we have brother Nduka Yahya Ebite, who said that we're making this platform a humongous white supremacy and Republicans agenda, and we are doing exactly what white supremacy is doing. You can see in the comment section that we asked for further clarification on this particular statement, but they were reluctant to answer, and they since disappeared. But as always, when it comes to family feedback section, anyone who comments on our things can be highlighted for our particular broadcastings, and we take it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So if you have something that you wish to share with the family, just leave it in the comment section, and we'll be glad to talk about it. But speaking of which, how about that political cartoon? Have a chance to look at that?
We're gonna look at that now.
Yeah, bring it up again. Yeah, we need to. Let's talk about this.
So we haven't got into our current events. However, our intro did end with this particular political cartoon, and I'm not into the reading rainbow, so I don't believe that we need to read it word for word. But what is here is statements that we know that Ice Cube has been in the media lately for presenting a Black agenda to Trump, and not everyone, but a lot of people has been calling him a call out for this. And some people respond that who really is the sellout when it comes to political agendas and Black people, because Kamala Harris went on record saying that she does not intend to create any type of agenda for Black people without even being questioned. Specifically, is she creating an agenda for Black people? She just wanted that on record.
Hey, Dude, I really wanted to read it so I can do her voice and say, "Let's be clear," and at the end, I wanted to say, "No."
Well, I mean, to be fair, Kashama, I don't think you had the hair for it. It's the "let's be clear," okay?
Yeah, let's be clear. No, that was the end, but yeah, you're right. Not without question. She said she's not going to do anything for Black people, and people are calling Ice Cube a sellout, which I think is very unfortunate because I mean, plenty of us have complained about Black people who have money, right? Who we don't think use their resources, in the manner in which promotes our interests or promotes an interest of liberation for our people. And here we have a Black man who takes his time, energy, and no doubt his money. I mean, and promoting this agenda, and a lot of us are ungrateful.
What I think is important to highlight is how misrepresented he was. For example, CNN said, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm paraphrasing based on what was written, that community reacts basically negatively to Ice Cube collaborating with Donald Trump. Well, Ice Cube never collaborated with Donald Trump. Ice Cube walked over to people that he knew in the Democratic Party and asked them to engage him, and they wouldn't initially. And Trump, who wants to be president, of course, said yes, probably before he finished with the question. Those dynamics are not Ice Cube's fault. Ice Cube's perspective is also, we don't know who's going to win, so I'm going to talk to these people. because nobody knows. Just like we all know now that last year around this time, everybody predicted that Hillary Clinton was going to win, and she didn't. So he talked to everybody available who would actually engage him. He never signed on with Trump. Matter of fact, he articulated very clearly that he was not a Trump supporter. However, what got lost in the sauce was a very powerful and well-written and necessary Black blueprint or Black print, if you will, which included reparations, police reform, economic equity, and all kinds of things that got lost. And I think strategically
education.
Lost. Yes.
Education as well. Some groundbreaking things.
Exactly. So you had Black people who went from crack to Biden in terms of addiction behavior, who don't want nobody to say nothing bad about Biden, who just did this, Black people who did this pushback to Ice Cube because they were concerned about Biden instead of about a Black agenda that they should have demanded that Biden to pay attention to, is what we should have done. But often white supremacy's interruption of our common sense has us being more white accommodationist than Black accommodations. And that's the problem with the reaction to Ice Cube.
So Ice Cube is actually, we were going to mention him the video is going to mention him in the current events. But since we've, discussed that, we'll definitely move on after the current events video. But if we can go ahead and get that current events video rolling, because we can talk
just
about
that. I want to make mention that we were going to be joined by Sister Tiffany Bliss. We were going to be joined by her for this particular broadcast and show. However, she had a family emergency, and so we are wishing her all wellness and care as she goes about to handle this. We do hope to be with her in the future, and I'm certain that we will. But to you, Tiffany, we wish you well and be safe. Producer, if you could roll clip. All right.
Daniel.
I wanted to say before the clip was run, so the audience would be clear, that we have a woman who's going to be joining our team as a permanent part of the show. And we thought one of the reasons why I'm here this evening, because I was going to help introduce her to you all. But as Duke already articulated, she had a very deep emergency suddenly, just a few hours ago, and can't make it here tonight. But she plans on being here for the next Melanated Solution show. But I want everybody to get in their minds that, because you're seeing the same thing gender-wise that you always see, that it won't be like that going forward as of next week. There'll be a woman on the show.
All right. So with that in mind, Breonna Taylor and the governor saying release. Now, we put everything down there, but I told the producer that it should have been ERRYTHANG, everything about the Breonna case, because as we know now, homicide charges weren't even brought to the jury's attention far as a possible charge that could have been held against these particular murderers. And so now we know that there's a huge system of corruption there, and people are jury members, I apologize, jury members are articulating this and going public about how some of this particular case was handled in the court system and how unfair it was for Breonna Taylor and the family and supporters of Breonna Taylor when it comes to getting quote unquote justice in this system.
I always say Daniel, because Daniel Cameron actually tried to get the jurors silenced when they first started coming up, and it goes so much deeper than him not offering homicide charges. He basically ignored giving the grand jury all of the information in regards to their rights as grand jurors, meaning they didn't even know that they could call for homicide charges. They didn't even know that they could add more people, to the indictment. They didn't know none of this stuff, and they were completely misled. And I think some people should go to jail behind this. I'm not with the whole, let's just talk about it and drag people, so to say, or cancel people. Canceling is not effective. there needs to be some prison time for these cops, as well as for the AG and anybody else that colluded with this.
The other dynamic that I think is important to illuminate is that this attorney general is Black. And one of the things that confuses Black children who are not given a critical analysis about how white supremacy works and how it contaminates is that often these Black people who get these positions are chosen by white people because they're compromisable and controllable, and often have a personal life that's entrenched in whiteness, which is becoming a bigger thing among Black people in this society. And they look Black because they do qualify as Black biologically, but they're not Black like me. And what I mean by Black like me is that I'm out of white accommodations, though I have the training and stuff to do some of these jobs, but I would never be hired, and I'm not looking to be hired. I want to make that clear. But the point I'm making is that they only hire a certain kind of Black person who's willing to do what you just mentioned, Kashama, hide stuff to save white folks, not give all the information to save white folks, talk in ways that make it look like this is the only outcome that could have happened in terms of Breonna Taylor's justice. And this is a particular type of Black person, unlike the sister that we have in Baltimore. What's her name? The Attorney General.
I was at her party. I don't know why I can't remember her name.
Well, I can't remember her name right now too, which is very important. Maybe our producer will help jar our memory. But that sister put some cops in jail for being corrupt and practicing racism. And there's a sister in Detroit, Kim Worthy is her name. I've been watching her for years, so that's why I didn't get her name before I even was starting working in Baltimore. She also prosecuted cops who were racist against Black people and did it with a straight face without hiccuping or thinking twice. But they got some Black people to fall through the cracks who are white accommodationists. And in most cases, a lot of Black people who become high up in government are white accommodationist Black people to create the image of inclusion, but they're really decoys for white supremacy.
Well, Cleo, I know you're going to agree with me when I say this too. It goes a little further too than even just picking them. In many cases, these people are groomed to become who they. Marilyn Mosby, thank you, Deion Floyd. I didn't want to get her first name wrong, but they are groomed to, in many cases, to become who they are. What's that brother's name who works with Trump? He put him over hood. Dr. Ben Carson. That's another person who white power didn't just pick him. they groomed, they made that brother, they created him. So I think it's important for us to look into preventative measures too, to keep future Daniel Camerons and Dr. Carsons from actually existing. But unless you have something to add to that, Duke, we can move on. We can move on to old Amy Coney Barrett.
It's funny.
Qualified self.
Part of this work and the purpose of this broadcast is to help activate the Black community's ability to be interested in local politics, at least, and figuring out what's going on in their community and really start, defending themselves against some of these things. And I swear to you, the further I dive into this, I watched that debate yesterday, side moment, and I'm just realizing how uninterested I am in the responsibilities and thought patterns of white people because they are legitimately crazy. So on to Amy, who said in one public case not too long ago, said that the use of the N-word is not a definitive example of a hostile work environment. And so therefore, the people who were being charged in that particular case. But she has a long history of whiteness, to put it fairly, of whiteness. And she's also considered the least qualified person to be considered for this grand jury position in the past 30 years.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that, Duke, and I'm glad that it was actually put into the video too, but strangely enough, that's not even the most concerning thing about her to me, her inexperience. It's like just the blatant racism, and then it's so insidious because she has 2 Black Haitian children that she's adopted. You know what I'm saying? That just, it's like the game has gotten so, and it's not a game because we are the only ones playing really, but the scene has gotten so insidious and crazy you know, is like there's all types of tricks that, you know, these white supremacists, white nationalists are pulling out, and it's really sick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I want to highlight something. People do what they do based on their perspective. And it's our perspective that Amy, what's her name? Amy Longstocking, what's her name? Amy something? Amy,
Coney.
whatever. Thank you.
Coney Island.
That she is not experienced. And people said the same thing about Trump. But I think they are experienced while it counts. Not for us, to be clear, not for us. But it's their experience where it counts because they're soldiers for white power and white control. So they don't need to have a lack of experience, generally speaking, to be able to rise to these heights. Because trust me, Trump, and again, Trump is not by itself. There's Pence, there's a whole slew of white supremacists behind Trump who help him make decisions. They vetted this woman. And they thought they were being slick by getting a woman, first of all, because they look less sexist and misogynist, given the pussy grabbing phenomenon. But these people are experienced because they've mastered being white supremacists, being people who believe in the perpetuation of white supremacy. What I mean, and also that she went and got some Haitian children. I take that personally. I'm not going to go too much further than that, except that the Haitians are some of the most royal people in our history of resistance, if not the most royal people, because they were the most successful people in the resistance against enslavement, dehumanization, and white supremacy. And she goes over there. It reminds me of Dylan Roof when he blew up that particular church that involved what's his name?
Denmark Vesey.
You know, these people are doing things that are historically
Mother Emanuel.
Exactly. These people are not. This stuff is not generic. These people are thoughtful about what they're doing, and they are qualified to be anti-black white supremacist control freaks.
Now, the thing about her is she ain't playing around at all, because the main thing about this hearing, well, this confirmation, is the fact that it's right before this election, and an election that we already know is going to be, you know, contested. We already know whoever is declared the winner, the loser is not going to readily accept it without a fight. She has refused to recuse herself from any electoral disputes that may come before the Supreme Court, and so that's major. What a lot of people are understanding, and this is a key. This is a prime example of I'm white and I said so. Like, do what I want to do. Just like she went and snatched them children up out of Haiti right after the earthquakes. And that's a fact. She snatched them up after the earthquakes when things were chaotic and people were taking black children out of Haiti like they were picking mangoes off of a tree. And don't think that this is just a Republican thing, because Hillary Clinton and the Clinton Foundation are the ones who set the scene in Haiti for people to take advantage after the earthquakes. Check my receipts.
When we talk about institutional power and building structure, regardless what happens on November 3rd, if she gets approved, that woman will be there for the remainder of the next president's term, right? And so this is so that we have to consider. And the next one
will be there for the next probably 5 presidents' term.
Absolutely. And so this is something that we have to consider when it comes to institutional power and structure, and making sure that the key players are in place on our end to make sure. And this is done not only because sometimes we get overwhelmed and we're thinking about the government and blah, 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 blah. Even locally, it is about making sure that we have key people in place that no matter who's in charge are actually advocating and fighting for the interest group of the people who live there, i.e. the black people. We were speaking very particularly about black people who live there. It's about doing that. Danae Washington said that they heard that she helped with Bush defense stealing that election from Gore, so this would be in her wheelhouse. And so this is just something that we have to consider. Like, when we are talking about elections vote, and this is the part that America does not prepare you for. Right, when we talk about voting and making sure that we go to our election periods and whatnot else, they don't talk to you about the Supreme Court. They don't talk to you about the Chief Justice. They don't talk to you about your local politicians, as well as members of the Electoral College. And so this is something we have to think about.
So speaking of politics, Duke, we do need to get back to Ice Cube for a second, because we got into talking about how great the document is, and we didn't name the document, Contract with Black America. And since you're talking about what we're not taught about politics, I think that's a perfect segue into discussing the Contract with Black America. We don't have to go into it. However, it's not a debate whether the Contract with Black America versus the LIFT Act and the Platinum Plan. It's not a debate whether that's a better document and whether that's in the actual best interest of Black people. But what I'm getting from a lot of people is that politics is centered and limited around parties, binary party politics, and electoral contests. And the CWBA, is, as I like to call it, I think is a prime example of Black people understanding that politics happens not just every 4 years and every 2 years, and that we should always keep focused on our own agenda. Now, there was an article put out by several people. The Grio put out an article where they're claiming that Ice Cube is leaving out Black women. I don't know if y'all have any thoughts on that, but also
I do.
Well, we'll get to it, Cleo. But let's line this stuff out real quick. He was being called sexist, and in addition to that, Roland Martin decided that he should partner with Alicia Garza, and it's also been said not only by Roland Martin, by plenty of other people. So I'm not just picking on Roland, that he didn't consult with the Black women, Alicia Garza being one of them, who have had their boots on the ground and have been doing this work of pushing a Black agenda. And the Black Census Project was mentioned as a Black agenda. So Cleo, you said you had some thoughts on the whole gender division and Ice Cube leaving Black women out.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief with this because I just have a short story. I was asked to speak at an Ivy League university, believe it or not, a short while ago. And I went there to talk to the faculty of other PhDs about using the academic experience to not only teach Black people the generic academic information they must experience to going on to be to graduate, et cetera, which is mostly white supremacy 101, even in HBCUs, but this was at HBCU. Anyway, I was there to talk to the Black faculty about a formula to help use the academic training experience to raise Black students who were invested in Black power and the affirmation of Black people. So during my conversation, a woman stood up. She had a rainbow flag on her shirt, and she had short hair, glasses, jeans. She was in a very classic, I'll put it in quotes, lesbian attire. And she got up and she said, your speech, this is a Black woman. Let me make that clear. She got up and she said, your speech and your talk is very interesting, but you forgot somebody. And I'm like, who was that? And I knew where she was coming from when she stood up. I mean, anyway. She said she forgot somebody. And I said, who? She said, well, you didn't mention the LGBTQ, XYZ, NLP, and all the rest of the people in your talk. And I stayed calm because I'm supposed to do that as part of my strategy to stay calm. And I said, well, sister, and she kind of, when I called her sister, she's looking around to see white people heard me call her that. I said, sister, you look Black to me. You look like you qualify as Black. You could be literally my sister. So when I talk about Black people, I'm including you. I'm including everybody Black. So you have not been excluded. Also, my talk is not finished. So before it was over, I was going to go into the diversity among Black people that we should consider in terms of creating a table for all of us to eat, but you're included. So my point in terms of the relevance of that and what you're talking about right now, Kasham, was that when Ice Cube said Black, he meant Black. Everybody, women, men, short people, tall people, people with dyslexia, left-handed people,
children, the grown folk.
Everybody, Black, just like when white folks, supported Trump and wanted to compensate for Obama and put a crazy white man, another crazy white man in the White House. People who were lesbian and gay and stuff like that didn't care about that. Trump didn't like them. They wanted that power back symbolically. So they were literally lesbian feminists, white, who voted for Trump. So Trump said, "You'll never be." What did he say? "You'll never be ignored again." He didn't.
Yes, he did. Just like that.
All y'all. I mean, if the whites who might be watching. So let's. So anyway, that's crazy that we were going to attack Ice Cube with a false patriarchal accusation.
Well, now, I'm glad you mentioned that. Well, go ahead. No, please go.
Because I don't share the lens that Ice Cube was being patriarchal or all that, but I do have a concern or question. It's just like, why now? Why go to Trump at this particular point? And I know that he didn't go specifically to Trump. He put the plan out there, and then Trump's people happened to respond. But I wonder, did Ice Cube consider how he could be seen as a quote unquote mascot or promotional value for Trump's campaign, and why even be this controversy this close to the election period? Like, do you see what I'm saying? Because it's just like, for me, it's just like Trump is literally just not the plan. We know Biden ain't the plan either. But why now, and why go to Trump when Trump's campaign could possibly end?
I'm glad you brought that up, Duke, because that is a question that a lot of people are asking, right? And I keep saying I hate that question because I do, first of all, but I'm glad you brought it up. Because we just said that, Trump ain't the answer, Biden ain't the answer. And Ice Cube himself said that, we have to bring this agenda to whoever wins. Like, whoever wins and whoever's going to be in power, that's who we need to go after with our agenda. Now, I would also argue that he didn't just bring it up now. That contract was finished, and I knew about it months ago. I knew about it when it was one page, and I thought it was ridiculous. I said, Ice Cube better go somewhere with his one page, right? And he got with the people that he should have got with, that he was supposed to get with.
He got with Boyce Watkins, I know is one of them.
Dr. Claude Anderson is the biggest one. That's the major player that really, I wish people would say his name more, because you can't shit on Dr. Claude Anderson for nothing. You cannot delegitimize him for nothing. White folks, black folks, nobody can delegitimize him. He's one of the leading economic thinkers in this country, white, black, blue, yellow, or anything, right? And so a lot of the people who are late are the ones who either get their information from white media or the people who don't get their information at all.
Or social media, just in general. And so something that
if you're late, you're gonna stay late.
Something that I would love, particularly on this comment thread, and if our producer can find it before us, that's just putting that out there. If you could do a link to the contract for Black America, because what I find is that oftentimes we find a headline or whatever is like a promotional statement that is heavy for everyone to critique, and then we create that as like the ongoing narrative of what this entire document is about. And I would just like it to be accessible on our platform. Anyone who views this particular stream, you can just click the link and you can read at your own discretion and figure out and determine for yourself whether or not this sounds good to you, and join us in
you're making a lot of sense, Duke. And Cleo have to. Let's stop. Cleo is constantly getting on me about making sense, right? You making sense. Like, this document ain't hidden. This document ain't under some rainbow somewhere with a pot of gold. Just like I read through them 22 pages, anybody can read through them 22 pages. The problem is people aren't reading it.
There's another problem.
Criticizing Ice Cube.
There's another problem though too, Duke, which I'm sure you must have seen. This society is very disrespectful to Black men. And this society has a campaign against Black men. And now, because of the power of the LGBTQ movement and gender nuance and everything else, there's this contrasting that's being done between Black men who are not in that community and Black men who are in that community. And Black men who are in that community are getting more play and a lot of affirmation. And as you know, there was an article written sometime that said heterosexual Black men were the white people of the Black community. And so what Ice Cube inherited was a pre-existing campaign in society to marginalize Black people, to silence Black men, and to make Black men who are not in conflict with being Black males problematic. So that's another issue that I think we should look at. The other issue, in terms of people dismissing this brother in the first place, when he had this plan way before we were talking about it right now. The other issue that we often don't see is context. The context of part of what Ice Cube was doing. First of all, he was looking at the landscape and mad about the lack of access Black people were having. When he had one page, I mean, every page he had in the beginning, he wrote it and stepped up between films and music to get this started. The other thing that helped to prompt him to come even further into the light was Biden and Trump came up with what I call their fried chicken plans. You know, one is called the Platinum Plan, and one is called the Lord Have Mercy Jesus. What's it called?
Soon I will be done with the troubles of the world plan.
Right. So these presidential candidates brought these plans for Black people, and Ice Cube said, wait. And he reviewed their plans. Let's be clear. He reviewed their plans and said, this ain't gonna get it. Then he further stepped up. And it's again important to reiterate that he didn't just step up to Trump. He never collaborated with Trump. He stepped to the people who were running for president. And the first people that he stepped up to, which was the Democrats, wouldn't meet with him initially. So that's the context that's missing. And then here comes CNN, who poses as a neutral force of media, saying Black people are mad at him for collaborating with Trump. He never collaborated with Trump. Now, Trump's people looked at his plan and chose to try to copy some of it linguistically, but I wasn't on Ice Cube. I wasn't Ice Cube who did that. So let's look past
much.
What was that?
They didn't even take hardly anything from the contract with Black America. That's just them talking. That had nothing to do with Cube. Yep. But Cleo, to your point, I want to show something. Adam, can you bring up the screenshot of the Black Census Project? I'm glad that you're talking about the disrespect and the ignoring of Black men, because this Black Census Project is what was being promoted as the Black agenda, and Alicia Garza was being promoted as one of the Black women who are doing this work of promoting a Black agenda that Cube should have consulted before creating his plan. And a lot of us, we don't know what real politics is. This is talking about the Black Census Project, which is nothing but a survey. And this is talking about the demographic of who they surveyed. It says Black Census Project intentionally oversampled certain populations. This is what they say now. Black Census respondents are younger, more likely to be female, and more likely to identify as LGBTQ plus than the Black population as a whole. The Black Census sample has a higher educational attainment than the adult Black population nationally. Nearly a fifth has earned an advanced degree. Give me the second one, Adam. Okay, this one is talking about the age. It says Black census respondent are also much more likely to report being lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender than are the respondents of other surveys. 14.5% to be exact, while only 4 to 5% of the adult population of any race reports the same. It also says that where are we going down? Okay, here it's not talking about the age here, but it already says that they are typically younger. So you can take that off, Adam. It's just like, one, that's a survey, and it's a jacked up survey at that doesn't even include Black men.
But it does include LGBTQ. That's all up in there.
So something that I question when looking at it is something else that I don't know if we're going to be prepared to talk about this evening, but I know it's going to dive into some of our discussion tonight, is that there's also more of a willingness of select groups of Black people to identify as LGBTQ as a way to distance themselves from Black identity, because Black identity for them, not only is it a place of trauma for a lot of them, and so they want to distance themselves socially as far as an emotional detachment, but also for some others, Blackness has no political power. And so identifying as LGBTQ gives them a leg in certain spaces in order to obtain structural power and systems. So this is something that we have to consider even when it comes to people filling out these particular census forms. Like, this is something that we run into on a daily basis.
Well, speaking of census forms and identity, before we get into the actual title, the actual topic, the meat of the discussion, which is Black TV too gay? I got a little something that producer just kind of sent me, and I think we should look at it. Adam, show us this billboard from this church in Harlem.
Black moms matter.
Black
Obama
moms matter.
And Kamala, your mama ain't black. Stop converting.
Stop covert white supremacy.
Stop covert white supremacy.
That's a lot of what's going on. Not just with the buffers, the biracials, the Decepticons and doppelgangers, right? Not even just with them, but it's also with this whole black women, feminism, black LGBT construct as well. There's a lot of covert white power going on, man, that they're just slapping black faces on it and getting in the way of real black agendas.
Well, what I want to mention though is that was our right moment for the night. That's why I suggested that it be there. But what I'm trying to deconstruct as quickly as I can is how that message, just like Ice Cube's message, came up against the brainwashing of the society. And let me be clear. The brainwashing of society said, you don't listen to no black man who's comfortable being a man and what he has to say. You listen to men who are pushing the envelope and who are transforming, nuancing femininity, and who are doing other things beyond just being male and who are stretching that. You listen to them, they're on the cutting edge and they're part of the new people that we should listen to. You don't listen to Ice Cube, so you make Ice Cube bad without even hearing what he has to say. Well, the reason I say that in response to what you just shown, on my Facebook page, I put that up. And I did say in one of my comments, well, it's true that Barack Obama has a white mother. It's true that Kamala comes from having a mother who doesn't identify as black, where she came from. Matter of fact, her birth certificate says that she's white. Mm-hmm. And these are not irrelevant issues. These are relevant issues. And it's true. And I believe that if it wasn't for the fact that Barack Obama had a profound connection to the proximity of whiteness and white people, he would not have been able to become president of the United States. And I can almost prove that if I have enough time to break down the science. But instead of listening to me, some Barack heads came in and going, you're being divisive, and he is black, and he married a black woman, and what you're saying is not right, and you better stop it. And I'm like,
you better.
And I got really quiet, and I said, wait a minute. This is not about Michelle. This is not even an attack on Barack from me. Now, I can't speak for the minister. I'm just saying that I think it's real relevant that the first potential vice president who will likely become the vice president and the first president that's identified as black are both of very mixed race, or have very close proximity to whiteness. The vice president being living with white people, take care of white kids, and having a white husband, and Barack having a white mother and coming out of a white cultural context. These are not irrelevant. These are very, very relevant. But my point in terms of contrasting with the reaction to Ice Cube is that this is stuff that pushes against the brainwashing, and people get irritated and start attacking. They tried to attack me, and they tried to attack ICE when ICE was simply just saying, look, let's look at the black agenda. So we're brainwashed is my point.
Well, brothers, we are a little past the half-hour mark of this particular live stream, so let's get into our topic. And if the producer, if you could put up the flyer for tonight so we can just contextualize everyone, get into what we're talking about. We're talking about, is black TV too gay? And how do we even come up with this topic? Now, I do have a comment sections when we try to promote for this show. Some people were livid in our comment sections at the idea of the question. And so let's see here. I pulled up a few here. Some people said they were just blocking us right away because they don't need this type of gaslighting when it comes to asking that question. Let's see here.
Lord. Gaslighting for real?
Someone said, I'm sick of this always being the main topic constantly. The world is changing as well as television with it. Get over it and move on, in all caps. We have another viewer who said that the problem with this is that no one is ever asked, is black TV too straight? Because as long as the sex scenes are hetero, it's no big deal. And why is it no big deal? Because straight people have the privilege of representation. Black LGBT people have always existed. That fact that they have made it into your favorite shows has since had Black folks shook. The fact that they made it into our shows has since had Black folks shook. Cisgender heterosexual, for those who don't know what those terms are, cisgenders for individuals who
don't use them on here, but
identify with the gender they were assigned at birth.
I respond to those people, and I can be brief, I promise. Somebody just said, and you read it, Duke, about all the representation of heterosexual people in the press, Black heterosexual people in the press, compared to same-gender loving people. And I asked that person, I said, come up with some shows that are not comedies, mind you, that feature Black heterosexual people loving each other. And they sent a list. The list was entirely comedies. And they even went way back to Sanford and Son. They were digging, trying to be right. And I said, I'm talking about shows that are not comedies that affirm heterosexual relationships between Black people. And instead of responding to my question rationally, they accused me of getting off topic and some other stuff because, again, it's the brainwashing. I mean, the bottom line is that American media or U.S. media doesn't affirm any kind of Black relationships. And not unless it's in a comedy context, which means it's a laughing matter and not to be taken seriously on a subconscious basis.
Adam, could you put up the meme about Black TV shows?
Yeah, because y'all asking like why are we asking this question and how did it come up? Like this is what is being seen to Black people.
So essentially, we have now a litany of work, but in most recent times, we have Lovecraft Country, we have the Chi, we have Kashama, bring them out. What's the other shows?
P-Valley.
Power, P-Valley, yeah. Black shows that are supposedly talking about a Black particular experience, and homosexual relationship shows up, and some people, including Snoop Dogg, who is triggered when these particular things show up. Some people are immediately turned off and feeling as if this no longer represents the Black narratives or stories that they are familiar with and want to talk about. And so this is a conversation that's been happening in the community for years, honestly, but it's definitely popping up even more, especially with the success of some of these shows like Lovecraft Country, that features a storyline that people don't want to talk about. And also isn't done uniquely, and we can get into that. Oftentimes these storylines are not uniquely done in a Black context. There's other particular themes and messaging that goes on around these particular stories that is not from a Black experience. I'm familiar with a story called Blackbird right now.
Oh. Oh my God! Are you talking about the movie Blackbird?
The movie Blackbird.
Man, bless Monique Hart. She didn't know no better. So I don't really blame Monique.
Well, let's answer this question, though. Let's answer this question. This question is based on a sentiment that's in the Black community, and that hilarious meme that you just put up with the Trojan horse of, quote, gay shit being led secretly into the Black community. That's a real perspective. So hopefully we're going to deconstruct that perspective because it really, really exists. I never even saw that meme before until today. I didn't know it existed, but I'm not surprised that I cracked up when I saw it. I didn't know it existed, but I know that sentiment is real. So let's engage that, brothers. What about that perspective? Is Black TV too gay? And again, just to keep it in context, we got the Chi.
I say yes, honestly.
So I want to look at the comments first before we dive straight into it. So some of the people in our comments are saying, Janae said that they have a problem when the show tries to be like a buy one minority get two for free type characters. Bongani mentioned they don't think it's gay enough. Yemi Melende said that it's annoyingly gay, very gay. King David mentioned that even the homosexual relationships are rarely portrayed in a loving way. Right. And Yemi also mentioned that problem is Black stories being told by white people or Black people with white accommodating mindsets. And so you were getting into your perspective, Kashama. You said yes, just straight up.
Well, and yeah, because it's a nuanced answer. I said yes for shock value, because the answer is yes. But just like Yemi said, the answer is yes because Black TV is too white controlled, and gay is a white lens of explaining sexuality, of homo, bi, whatever type of sexuality. And just like somebody said, even the homosexual relationships are rarely portrayed in a loving way. Lovecraft Country.
Can we talk about it?
Yeah, Lovecraft Country was just like, it was a trash scene. Like, it wasn't needed. It was a trash scene. It was done for shock value. It was, you know what I'm saying? It did not advance the plot.
Representation's sake.
Right.
Well,
that's your representation.
Well, if you young brothers don't mind, let the old man try to join in on this real quickly, because I have speaking of nuance, Kashama, I have a very nuanced perspective when it comes to Lovecraft. I watched every moment of it from beginning to end, and I was disturbed by how tormented the same gender loving brother was, and how the relationship he had with his son, and how his son literally almost beat him to death. However, at the risk of sounding like I'm doing a critique of a movie, I don't mean to. What I want to look at is the nuance here, which is that some of you might be too young to know who Marvin Gaye was. Some of you know who Prince was. And there's other people who I can't remember who name right now who had a very problematic father and son relationship. As a matter of fact, Marvin Gaye, his father was a cross-dressing minister. Did you both know that?
No, I didn't.
Yes.
I know about Marvin Gaye, not his family.
Marvin Gaye was his father was a cross-dressing minister. His original name was G-A-Y, but Marvin, when he was preparing to get famous, put an E on it because he didn't want no connection to G-A-Y. And his father and him had a very similar relationship to the people in Lovecraft, and his father did indeed murder him.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been lots of fathers, Joe Jackson, the Jackson 5's family, who were considered of overly beaten and being brutal to his children. And there's been particularly before your time, because since you young brothers have been around, there's been it's illegal now to strike a child. Let everybody know about it. That is simply down low. But anyway,
South and say that.
Right, but the bottom line is that back in the day, there were some fathers in particular and some mothers in the Black community who were beating their children the same way we experienced during slavery, and unusually that's depicted in this film. And there's this powerful scene where the young brother Atticus says that you beat my ass. And you told me not to be soft. And look at you, you're a homosexual. And then finally, they go back in time, and Atticus sees how his father was treated and how his father was beat, and they become closer. And he loves his father again because he has context. To me, that was powerful. And that story could not even have been told without bringing in what I'm going to call the SGL angle, because it's a real angle, it's real. And I had never seen it portrayed like that before. And it was very, very powerful for me to witness in a television show that story being told. Now, is Black TV becoming too gay? I'll just say that I'm not sure if it is, but I do agree with what Yemi just said and what I think you brother said a moment ago. You, Kashama, mentioning that typically the gay theme is written by white folks or black white accommodationist folks. But this particular theme was particularly Black.
Yeah, and I think that episode had a lot of like healing context in it. You talking about that episode about Tulsa and the
Tulsa episode had a lot of things.
Before that, though, Cleo, they had not unpacked it at all, and all you saw were like the sexualized aspect of it, and then it got real raunchy. And it reminds me of that episode of the Cosbys, and we can still talk about the Cosbys, can't we? It reminds me of that episode of the Cosbys when Vanessa brought this guy she was dating, his brother. And Bill Cosby told her, he said, when you brought him here, you didn't say this is the guy I'm in love with and blah, blah, blah. You said he's a plumber, right? This is how you presented him to us. And it's crazy that a lot of people don't understand that this is the context in which sexuality and relationships are being presented to Black people. is not being presented typically in that way you described, Cleo, where you're seeing actual real relationship dynamics between Black people and healing going on. You seeing the gutter nitty gritty mechanics of it all, and that ain't made for everybody's eyes.
Real quick, Dion had said that what's interesting is that Montrose isn't in the book. I want to respond to that because from my understanding, Lovecraft Country, the TV show, the adaptation of it is based completely in fiction of the fiction because the author of the book was racist and he did not have these Black characters as the leads at all. So everything that you're watching in this particular show adaptation is a reimagining in a FU response, if you will, to the original author of the book in order to censor Black narratives, if you will. So, but something that I want to mention is that I think there's two things going on here because I think what we need to start doing for our audience and also for ourselves is really define the term gay, right? Because when we mention gay, there's a huge group of people who assume that what we're talking about is the act itself, the sexual behavior, the intimacy that individuals can have between same sex and gender things. And then there's also the people who recognize that gay is a politic. That it is a structural power in our society that is used in order to create converse discussions and social dynamics and also prisons for people. But so that's the first thing that I think that we really need to start articulating and making clear for our audience and ourselves and for our community as a whole, because we're not talking about how we interact and love each other is categorized under these particular political systems, and then therefore we move into our communities and start identifying in certain ways in order to get the political power that I was talking about earlier. So I want to make it clear that when I'm talking, for me, and this, I don't know what anyone else's thoughts is, for me, there's not enough homosexual relations in TV featuring Black people. Not at all, right? But there's plenty and too much gay relations in Black TV, okay? So
wait, dude, I want to bring something up too, because this brother Dion, he was talking about how Montrose was one way in the book. Now, and what you said, thank you for clarifying that, but I'm going to bring up another example though. Madam C.J. Walker, they made her daughter a whole lesbian in that movie when there was like nothing really that implied that in her real life.
That's not true. Yes,
well, I mean, excuse me. She was said to be like, very free spirited and sexually fluid. However, they made it like, this was her thing. This is all she wanted, all she was with. They even gave her a husband and gave him a narrative and made him a buffoon.
Well, Duke did something I think we got to do first, though, Kashama. Duke suggested that we unpack the paradigmatic differences between gay and what we're talking about. We should do that right now.
Okay.
So people will not be scratching their head in case some of them are. When we talk about this conversation. So I don't want to be the one to start this off, but somebody needs to talk about the dichotomy between what we know gay to be and what you meant, Duke, when you said you want to see more homosexual relationships or love relationships, or whatever.
I'm going to do that right now. But two things. If Adam, if you could highlight Yolanda Holloway's comment that said that the author of the book, thank you, Yolanda, for correcting and putting the full context out there that Matt Rush is the person who did the reimagining of the original racist script of Lovecraft Country, and Matt Rush did the new. Thank you for that, Yolanda. So for me, I take it back to James Baldwin, and thankfully came in contact with you, Cleo, who also made light of this particular interview. But James Baldwin did an interview with Goldstein. And if you type in James Baldwin Goldstein in Google search, it is the very first article that will pop up. And James mentioned how during his time period, now anyone who knows James Baldwin, he was an out and proud homosexual, okay? He was not hiding anything, crossed his legs, smoked his cigarette, and talked about how he loved being with men. But something that he refused to do, even during that time period, was identify as gay. Because James said that the gay identity meant nothing for Black people. And it didn't express show any type of identification or representation for him as a Black homosexual, because he figured that gay was just white people who identify as LGBTQ, quote unquote, who felt as if they did not have as much structural power in racism as their heterosexual white counterparts. So they were complaining about not having the same amount of power of being oppressors and being racist. And so therefore they came up with this particular gay politic in order to articulate how oppressed they were as individuals. But he mentioned that that oppression was not the same as a Black person or any other person outside of that particular identity label. So when it comes to me watching these shows, and there's something else that I want to bring up too, and I hope I'm not being too distracting for folks, is that oftentimes when we see these relationships, quote unquote, or these homosexual relations with homosexual characters, Black ones, not only are they often with white people or very light-skinned individuals, as far as a Black person being with them, but also is usually a side character. They're not good enough to be a main character. It's just a side character. Then all of a sudden you see the side character's vivid sexual expression with no intimacy. Like when we think about Montrose and that, bro, it was just like a ramming. It was too much for people who are in the lifestyle. It was just like, oh, like just like that, like no, like,
I was like,
no, kid.
I see no vaccine.
So, you think when we see these particular depictions, they are off center and it is one of those things. It's a curveball for the audience because we're not following this particular person's story in a love. Think about a show like Girlfriends, right? If we're talking about the four main characters of Girlfriends and they do their sexual relations, and when we see their love, all of a sudden we see a side character who's not part of the main story usually, all of a sudden engaged in a particular sexual act and not like an off-screen or thing that we normally do for these TV shows. So it is a curveball for the audience. And when I'm looking at the relationships, and this is all relationships, not just homosexual on TV, there's not a lot of love going on. It's strictly sexual. It's so structured and distant. You're not seeing these people being hugged up and loving and dating each other. It's you may see one date and then they fighting in the next 5 minutes, and then in very viciously.
So Duke Kashamba, then why would anybody? And this is not a rhetorical question. I want to see if you can deconstruct this. Then why are people saying Black TV is becoming too gay? With emphasis on Lovecraft, Shy, Power, and P-Valley. Mm-hmm. Why are people saying that?
I think it goes back to what somebody in the comments said as well. They mentioned that buy one minority, get two free. But I think it goes a little deeper than that as well. I mean, we are being used as the face of gay when it comes to a lot of television and movies as a way, and this is my personal theory, as a way of hijacking and co-opting the struggle of Blackness and making sexuality on par with the oppression of Black people. I think that they are intentionally trying to blur those lines, and that's why you're seeing this happen. To me, I don't watch a lot of TV, so I may not be the best person to say this, but from what I can gather, it seems as if this is being put in shows that are optically and aesthetically Black, more so, and just being kind of haphazardly thrown in, as opposed to it being an organic character, and we get to, like Duke said, see this person in context.
Now, I do want to make it real clear, because I think it's still two parts going on there. A lot of the individuals I know who complain about this topic heavily, and I mean complain like this is their religion, are utterly repulsed by same-sex relations in general. Right. And so this is something that we're seeing in our community, far as not wanting that depiction at all. Now, I know why, and we can get into that. But when we hear these particular comment sections come up, that is often what's going on. I want to make mention real quick that our producer has just put the link in the comments for individuals to join us. If you want to join in on this discussion, please know that we do have a time to adhere to, so we would love for you to make your comment, and then we'll just politely excuse you out. But we would love to have you in. Just click the link and you can join us. Cleo?
I think, hear me clearly, so y'all throw something at me in case you get that impulse. I think, I think, despite the fact that this society is anti-Black male, and despite the fact that the media and most of these systems are misandrous and anti-Black male and anti-Black female as well, but this is what we're going to talk about from our perspective is more relevant to Black males, because we all know that same-gender loving women often are given a pass because somebody's compared to Black men. You know, I mean, they're in porn films, even heterosexual porn films, and all kinds of stuff, where that's less frowned upon. I think that there's some people in our community, though, despite all the anti-Black male rhetoric and emphasis in the culture, who care about Black men, who care deeply about Black men, and who believe that Black men are under major, fundamental, omnipresent attack, which I agree with. And we have not had any conversations in the Black community about sexual diversity and nuance. So they're concerned that Black men are being compromised, emasculated, and destroyed, and that homosexuality is symptomatic of that destruction. There's been a couple of books written by Black people who talked about their coming out to their parents. And one of the first things their parents said, and the associate of mine named Kay Boykin, former associate, wrote a book where he talked about he came out, and the first thing his mother said, and matter of fact, I ran to a brother about a month ago who had the same experience, telling his parents, and the first thing he said was, "Is he white?" And he didn't get it. The brother that told me the story recently, he just saw the classic deduction of his parents being racist. But what I had to break down to him, and I asked him to go back to his family and check this out, and he did, and he realized I was right. I said, a lot of Black people are like, and you got to remember, Don Lemon, Lee Daniels,
Jonathan K. Martin,
all these people that they see on TV are having sex with and are in relationships with white men. So they think that represents everybody calling themselves homosexual or gay. So their perspective is, wait a minute, you get effed by the society and have been getting effed even through rape by white men for centuries, and now you're going to voluntarily lay down to be raped and call it a relationship? This is a sign of this complete destruction of the Black male from some of these people's perspective. And that's why they have this question, which is almost never answered because it's not a real question. They don't seek a question. It's really a judgment. Is Black TV too damn gay? And that's a real perspective that LGBTXYZ won't give you permission to actually engage. But I think we should engage it because, frankly, it might not be delivered in the best way, but it's a legitimate concern.
It's something I want to make light. We got to reveal, going back to these comments, I'm sorry, these comments, what we have to reveal is that Black LGBTQ identified individuals often have this same concern, but they act as if when Black people outside of the community, Black heterosexual people outside of the community have this concern that it's all of a sudden homophobic. But if you look at any of these particular forums and thoughts for individuals who are not engaging with white folks, and they see these videos of Black men being fondled and being submissive to white partners, they have this same critique and this eeriness, and it looks like Black people, Black men in particular, being weak, being quote unquote not power in patriarchy, not powerful in the form of patriarchy in a society when they often are being submissive to white partners. And so this is a real concern in the Black community in general, but LGBTQ politics, which is a white power structure, has made it where that you cannot question this conundrum. You cannot question this power structure. Hey, Yemi.
Got my little brother on. Yemi.
Good to see you, Yemi. We can't hear you, though.
I'm you.
Now we can hear
you. Yeah.
Oh, okay. How y'all brothers doing?
Hello.
How you doing?
Well, I appreciate y'all bringing this, on a Friday. We don't get this kind of revolutionary, thinking about what's going on. But yeah, I just think like representation is TV. I personally kind of like Kashama. I don't really watch TV too often. I see stuff on Facebook, kind of just be like, it's just past because it's just always something like negative. It's just never shown us in a good light. So it's just, you know, it kind of gets draining, and especially with like this presidential stuff. People take all of this stuff to heart, like, you know, just even with, I guess in general with Ice Cube, everybody's just mad at Ice Cube, but in their head, Kamala Harris is a saint. So it's just a lot of stuff. You just got to kind of just focus yourself and just keep your mind and just be surrounded with, you know, like-minded people through all this stuff, and just see yourself, you know, if you see yourself positive, you got to think about that, because the white media won't show you as a positive figure in TV. They're going to always show our negatives, or like you say, submitting to like some white people or something, then that's when you looked up as a good black person. So yeah, that's just my thoughts on that.
Thank you, Yemi. Thank
you. You're welcome.
Before Yemi came aboard, somebody asked, what does the Q mean?
Quasi.
It means queer. Queer. Which is now, I
was saying, used to mean questioning.
They change up every 5 minutes, and black people jump on it. Some of us, I don't, but jump on whatever they say and co-op whatever they do. But the Q used to mean questioning. Then white folks decided to go to Britain and snatch queer out of their culture and put it in America so homosexuals can jump on some more of their white affirmation. And they got black people calling themselves queer. But that's what the Q stands for, brother. It stands for queer.
Deshaun Farad mentioned something in the chat. He says, I remember in Tyler Perry's show Oval Office, they had Travis Cure being fondled by a white man. If y'all don't know who Travis Cure is, he used to be an Instagram model turned actor, and he's presumably heterosexual. And I remember that show. That's one of the things that turned me off from it. Some white guy had him tied to a bed and was like, you know, molesting him. And then we also had the show The Chi, where actor Khalid Barton, I think we have a photo of him, don't we, Adam? He left the show amid rumors that he had to leave because they wanted to put him in a love relationship with a transgender woman or transgender person. Mm-hmm. He later came and said that that's not true. He left and he didn't give reasons why he left the show. But like I say, the person who replaced him, which is Luke James, I believe. Am I right, dude? Luke James replaced him.
Yeah, Luke James replaced his like brother or something.
And that person was then put in a relationship with a transgender person. So it sounds like the rumor was true, but he just, you know, in order to save his career and to keep the LGBTQ mafia off of his heels, which they were on his heels pretty bad till he set the record straight. And Snoop Dogg had to do something similar. He had to come out and say, hey, y'all don't get me. I was just playing, when he made some statements about power. But we got Brother Bongani on.
Welcome back.
Oh, hello, gentlemen. How are y'all doing?
All right.
How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I want to say, Dr. Menango, it is truly an honor to be speaking with you, brother. I have watched many of your videos, and I am truly humbled by you. I would also like to say that I feel like, you know, the way that media displays homosexuality plays into ignorance. Now, in order to maintain a certain viewpoint of us, you can't actually show who we truly are or what our values are. You know what I mean? Homosexuality is not necessarily, let's go hook up and suck a dick somewhere. It's about two brothers. I'm sorry. I forgive me. I spoke. It's about two brothers that truly love one another and can express that in a way that is absolutely beautiful and not to be hated upon. You know what I'm saying? And I really feel like that intolerance is something that is a colonization attribute for sure.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's put that perspective in quick context. Mm-hmm. In Botswana, I guess it was a year ago now, something, they decided to reject all colonial rules and regulations in their government system. Right. And they went down the whole list, including anti-homosexual literature and politics and systems that were in their governmental system, and they rejected that too, and let same-gender-loving people in Botswana live their lives without having to be worried about being jailed and everything. And the fact of the matter is, in every single country without exception that's anti-homosexual, it's always coming from a colonial perspective. Right. And it's the residue of a colonial power who came in to control everybody's lives. And Botswana let that go.
Thank you for
I'm glad
bringing
to
that
hear
up, Bongani.
Oh, no doubt, brother.
Something so I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm sitting here in my room, and so therefore it's just like right here next to me. But a good book for people is The Spirit of Intimacy, Ancient African Teachings and the Ways of Relationships by Sombufu Somé. And her husband have written a few books on this particular topic around intimacy and relationships between African people. And what's special about this book to me is that there's a chapter in here titled Homosexuality. And the way she opens this particular chapter is by saying that she had, I'm sorry, to be clear, she's from Africa. She's speaking very intently about...
From Burkina Faso, from the Gara community or the Gara people of Burkina Faso to be specific.
Correct. And so to be very clear, she's from there, and she has this title in the chapter about homosexuality, and the way she opens it is that I wasn't going to write a chapter on this. Like just very clear. She said I wasn't going to write a chapter on this, but because I realized that my African American brothers and sisters are so traumatized around this topic, I have to write a chapter on this. But in general, everything that I presented in this book, from all the chapters before this point about love and relationships, applies to you too. But she goes on to mention how there was not this separate categorization around how people had sex with consenting adults, and so therefore it's just something for us to consider. And she goes into a lot more, but if you want to get that, it's just there. It's something to consider about how we talk and deal with intimacy and love. Like we mentioned it before, that we have to decolonize our education. We have to decolonize our food. We have to decolonize our entertainment. We also have to decolonize our intimacy and our relationships and how we move about together as people.
Hold the book up, dude. Hold it up again so we can see they want us to put it in the chat as well. I think Adam will do that for us. The Spirit of Intimacy by Sombufu Somé.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so it's something that I think that we should heavily consider. Now, what makes it difficult is when people subscribe to whiteness and white ideology. Is so many Black people who go into white LGBTQ spaces because they've been traumatized either from their family or their friends. And some of them haven't even been traumatized at all. They just heard stories of other people who were traumatized. And so therefore they adopted a messaging that the Black community is quote unquote the most homophobic. Not true, by the way. There's like legit sciences and studies that show not true. And they go into whiteness and start promoting this LGBTQ space as a safe haven. Go there, recognize how racist it is, talk about how racist it is, and realize that they've been fetishized, realize that they are not being advocated for. It's so many stories of Black homosexuals who could not get political work done when it came to Black individuals needing housing or support or services because they were thrown out of their houses or whatever else. But Black people were consistently there for whiteness and being pawns for whiteness. And when white LGBTQ has their pride parades and their coming out days, Black people at the forefront, going out into Black communities, recruiting individuals into this space that they already know is not safe. The individuals have already articulated this space is not safe, but somehow it's safer than being in a Black community. And that's just not true. And that's something that we have to really recognize about how racism works in this country. And good sex is racist.
Well, another thing I think is important to raise on the heels of what you just said, Duke, is that you mentioned that same-gender loving Black people, because of the lack of support or affirmation or acknowledgement, or because of rumors about how bad Black people are, run into the white gay community for sanctuary and endure their racism. But we have to remember that regardless of people's sexuality in society, most of us are trained to be anti-Black. Mm-hmm. And think that white people's water is wetter and better and their fire is hotter and better, and that they're more quality of a person and human being than we are. So getting similar to what you just said, or part of what you just said, we don't even have to be traumatized by Black people from a direct hurtful experience. We can just watch television. Mm-hmm. You just watch television and you see Romeo and Juliet and whatever they're doing. You are turned into an anti-Black person. In my opinion, there's many symptoms of anti-Blackness. Just calling ourselves the N-word and using that as part of how we low rate each other is is a symptom of the anti-blackness that's in our community, regardless of what your real life experiences with other Black people. Because remember that time, Duke, that you did that exercise at the Black Music Exchange about Black men. You brought
Black fathers
brought in data that showed that indeed there were more Black men in college than were in prison, et cetera. And there were people in the room, particularly young people, who just could not handle. No. Black men are bad. I don't care what you say. And you say, well, here's the data. Here's the data that proves that this stuff is not true. And they literally couldn't handle it. So the anti-Blackness in the culture sometimes overrides people's real experience, or they see the world through the whites of their eyes and not through a real living experience that could be affirmed because they don't believe in it because they're anti-Black.
So a question I have for you two is that when we look at the comment section on the promotion for this particular broadcast and live stream, seemingly the individuals, homosexuals, some homosexual identified individuals were just so turned off by the mere question. What is the work that can be done to bring these people back into a center of community? Because nothing we did has been, and I'll go on record, I will put my stamp on it. Nothing we did has been anti-Black homosexuals. However, the ideology is whenever you question LGBTQ in any sense of form, you are automatically questioning the behavior. You're questioning the individuals who are associated with this community, even by proximity. So it's something that I think is just worrisome and very problematic. Like, individuals ready to block the page, individuals have all these assumptions. It's just, we're talking about a topic that is going on in our community. Like, people have this question. It's a legit question.
Well, what was your question, Duke?
My question for you two is, what do you think we can do in order to solve for that, to bring these communities back in together, have dialogue, talk?
I think, well, it's funny. The answer is kind of, to me, what you're saying, dialogue. You know, you can't get anywhere until you have dialogue and until you're willing to have dialogue. And so us understanding that there needs to be dialogue, us understanding that there needs to be balance. You know, a lot of people, like a lot of LGBTQ identified people have an issue with you saying that heterosexuality is the norm. And when 96% of the population is that, hell, that's the norm.
But I think it comes from an idea of wanting to center yourself as normal too. Like, people don't want to be seen as abnormal.
That's the thing. There's a difference between you being abnormal and something being, the norm, as in meaning it occurs mostly, right? And that doesn't make the person who, doesn't occur mostly abnormal. You see what I'm saying? It's a logic thing that people have to come across. But that's what a lot of people are getting when you say, well, hey, this is the norm.
What we're up against, y'all, as I said earlier, is that our people are brainwashed. For example, the reason that there's a trans person on Shy.
Yeah, okay. I thought he was popping a pose real quick.
They came for him immediately.
Yeah,
smashed him up. Maybe he'll join us back soon. We got about 10 minutes.
But you never watched P-Valley though, did you? Do
I saw clips.
I wish you had watched it, because I actually like the show. And I think the problem with a show like P-Valley is that as Black people, there are always so many agendas in our entertainment. It's like we can't even explore a lot of the real interesting stories that be going on in our people. Like strip clubs is a real thing in our community, and in other communities too. But there's a real strip club culture. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and you could take P-Valley, and really, I think you could take it and you could make those characters like white if you wanted to. And you still have the same story and you still have the same amount of entertainment. But the problem is, I think when you start showing strippers and I don't know if Uncle Clifford is considered a drag queen or not, But you know what I'm saying? Like the strongest man in P Valley is Uncle Clifford. You know what I'm saying? So when we get these things and there's no real balance to it, people are looking like this is all you push at us. And if there was balance, like if we were back in the day of Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee, where black people were creating these movies and stuff. All right, Deshaun. I watch P Valley because I like sisters with fat ASSs.
with assets, with fat leverages, fat booking.
But yeah, but back in the day when Ossie Davis and Ruby Dee and these people were actually making black movies and kind of controlling a little bit of the narrative, we could have more balance to the stories that were told. We could tell stories of pimps and prostitutes, but then, you know what I'm saying, the stories of the pastor and the school teacher, all of those were being told at the same time as well. So I think we're looking at an issue of imbalance today as well. And that's what's causing a lot of the anxiety when we see certain images.
I mean, even when we look at, and spoiler point, just a mid-spoiler point for Lovecraft Country, and I'm not going into story, just how the story is told. The final episode of Lovecraft Country, and the men were utterly useless. And that, in like from a contextual point of view, like they did nothing. And all the heroes in that particular, including a non-black person, were all women in that particular episode. And so it's something that's going on with how black men are being portrayed socially, as well as in media. And a lot of times it's not even based in fact and truth. And so I know we talked to Dr. Tommy Curry a while ago, and I'm a big fan, but he's been doing even more work and research, and I would love to have him come back to really start articulating how a lot of times the data doesn't even match up to the perceptions that people have about black men. But when we're going back to the topic of sexuality and even gender presentation, what I recognize is that we as a community have to make space for defining ourselves again. If Cleo can remember, I'm gonna just finish with this. We gotta make space for defining ourselves again, because a lot of times black people have just been maneuvering how you see them for a very long time, and then some 50 years ago, white people come up with a term, and then all of a sudden, that is how that's the rhetoric, that's the political agenda, that's what's going forward. So, homosexuality has been around for centuries, okay, but LGBTQ politics has only been around for about 50 years. But when we talk about sexuality and homosexuality globally, the only way we know how to talk about these terms is through a white supremacist lens and ideology. And I'll end with this. There's a reason why we don't hear terms like Winkte and terms like Hablongo and things like that going forward. There's a reason why we don't say things like they got a little sugar in their tank anymore. There's a reason why we're not doing these particular euphemisms, if you will, for defining ourselves, and we've adopted whiteness. But Cleo, you were getting ready to mention the trans story in the Chi.
Well, I was just mentioning that when people watch television and they see a predominantly black cast, they assume that black people are running all of this. Just like when they watch How to Get Away with Murder and they see Viola Davis and they hear about Shonda Rhimes, that she's the star and Shonda Rhimes wrote all of this. No, this stuff goes vetted. It's edited by white folks. They say, no, yes, you get to do that. No, you can't do that. And as we know, speaking of Viola Davis's character, she loves everybody and everything but somebody black half the time. And that show, though, was written by somebody black, supposedly. But what I was getting ready to say is that the reason we're talking about transgender issues and why there's a trans person on Chi, because there's not that many white situation dramas with a transgender person being falling in love with this is a white agenda. White people decided to make transgender issues the central issue of pop culture and the general conversation. So there it is. And there's people like the sister that gets credit for Chi, who is way more involved in LGBTQ than she is in BLACK. She's way more involved in that than she talked about issues relevant to black people. So she's just riding the wave. And a lot of the times, black people, because we're not in conversations rationally about these issues, there's a lot of assumptions that fester into concern and anxiety on both sides. For example, there are black people who feel like, is black TV2 gay? Then you have gay-identified LGBTQ queer people who are saying to us, get that away from me, because instead of being willing to have a conversation about a Black perspective, they want to go running back to white gaze for sanctuary, despite its racism. But you asked a question before I was so rudely interrupted. Your question, Duke, was what do we do about those naysayers? And it depends on your, particularly in the social media context, on your patience and your time. And I don't always have it in the social media space like that. Like I knew that the person who was challenging us, assuming we were a bunch of what they would call hotep, anti-homosexual, heterosexuals. That's what they assumed. And I kept saying, why don't you watch the show? Why don't you add to the show? Why don't you bring your perspective and get talked down and get put down in homosexual? I said, well, you don't know what's going to happen until you actually do it. So all we can do is make a recommendation. I'm not sure if any of those adversarial people watch the show or not, but sometimes you just have to have patience with them. If I would have identified as a homosexual and jumped down their rabbit hole, they may have been here, but I'm not going to play into those scripts. Not unless I'm being strategic. If I'm in front of a live group or something like that, and I'm there to be strategic and do some for work, I'll do it. But sometimes people are not going to listen because they are not equipped to. They want you to become LGBTQ and jump on a white paradigm for them to pay attention to you. And I'm not willing to jump on that bandwagon.
It definitely takes patience on social media, as Duke, you pointed out to me one day. And I thought I'd be thinking that of course we all can improve, but I'd be thinking I need major improvement with my level of patience on social media sometime. But you kind of affirmed me one day and was like, Shama, you got the patience of God. But it definitely takes patience, and it takes dialogue and the power of questions. Asking questions for people to answer, and they have to. A lot of times, people have to come to terms with their own. I call it colonized crazy. When you ask questions, they have to answer those crazy questions and give their crazy answers, and then they have to come to terms with that.
And that's what I do all the time when I'm in live company, and sometimes on my Facebook page online. I wasn't necessarily in the movie bottle with these people on the national page, so I didn't put enough time there because I didn't have the time. But people keep mentioning Dr. Curry in our, particularly Deshaun Farad, and we already talked about sister's work, Some. I think we should quickly, in terms of solutions, bring in Dr. Curry's work as well, because and given that we talked earlier about the resistance to Black male voices that are not compromised, this brother's brilliant, as Brother Farad said. He breaks stuff down. He's a genius. His work is on point. However, even though he's a full scholar, a legitimate PhD, his work was affirming of Black people, which is contraband in the United States, including in the academy, meaning the university level. And because he wasn't allowed to flourish, even though he had published a brilliant book called what's it called again?
The Man Not.
The Man Not.
Examining race, class, and gender, or something like that.
He wound up, it's called The Man Not.
Yeah.
He wound up having to leave the entire country to flourish as an academic and scholar, because white supremacy in this country will not let him develop a whole division in the scholarly world that affirmed and explored the life of Black people in ways that didn't simply judge and exploit Black people. He's contextualizing the Black experience and contextualizing the attack on Black men and contextualizing the resistance to talk about what Black men really go through, which is often buried under the myth of Black male privilege. And you got to check out the man's book. It's amazing. And it's just as important to what we do as Malidoma Somé and his wife Sombufu's work in terms of getting understanding of the Black experience. Very important book.
So we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap up tonight's broadcast. I think that tonight was a great, discussion, and I think we did get started cracking into some of the solutions, and we should definitely come back to discuss the idea of media and gender, and actually, and like you said, let's get kind of deeper into Dr. Curry's work. Duke, Cleo, did you all have anything you wanted to say to wrap up?
I just want to say, feel empowered, people, to define yourself outside of white supremacist context. What we do and how we love has been around for generations. It's going to be around forevermore. And we don't have to go to white blueprints and transcripts to figure out how to be human with each other, because white people have no credibility on how to be human.
That's for damn sure. Somebody in our comments, Miss Holloway asks, what was Tommy J. Curry's full names? Dr. Tommy.
Yes, Tommy J. Curry.
Dr. Tommy J. Curry.
Mm-hmm.
That's his name. And the book is called The Man Nod, and it's an exceptional.
And he just had a birthday yesterday, so happy belated.
Oh yeah, happy birthday, Dr. Curry.
But closing words is there's going to be a sister joining the troupe to make sure that there's more gender nuance, including biological gender nuance, as opposed to conceptual gender nuance on our show. Her name is Tiffany Bliss Brown. And she was supposed to be here tonight, and I was here to welcome her, but she's not here because of her emergency, as was mentioned earlier, but she will be here. So prepare to see a more nuanced show regarding representation and our conversations. And I'll be back and forth sometime. I won't be here all the time, but I want you to support the show anyway and show up, because we want this show to be successful because it's necessary. And also, as opposed to watching it on Facebook, if you have YouTube, watch us on YouTube, because the more we're able to monetize this show, which cannot be done on Facebook, but only on YouTube, the more we can make sure that the show has a long life, because it takes resources to do this kind of work. But I want to let Kashama and Duke know I appreciate you, brothers, and the magic and genius you're bringing to the Melanated Solutions stage, and the work you do on the other stage, which we're going nameless right now. But you know what stage I'm talking about. It starts with a B. But I want to thank you for your work, and I will be back every now and then. But I want to get Black people to understand that it's important to love ourselves in our own image, to be critical thinkers, to be patient with Black people, and understand that it's not Black people's fault when they're anti-Black. It's a side effect of living in the United States. The only way we can resolve is patiently and lovingly, like Kashama said earlier, ask people questions that make them have to take a look at why they think the way they think. And it's my opinion that asking certain questions breaks the anti-Black white supremacy trauma trance that most Black people are. Those questions break the trance, at least temporarily. And it's better to have compassion with some questions than have an attitude and writing Black folks off.
Melanated Solutions Media on YouTube.
Like, subscribe, and share, Black family.
Absolutely. And thank you, Bagani and Yemi, for joining us tonight, and hopefully others will in the near future.
I want to shout out the sisters Yolanda, Danae, and looks like Sandy joined us as well. Thank you. We just special shout out to you all. Please let your sisters know. We want to talk to you all too.
Peace, y'all.
Bye. Talk to you later.